Doctors and nurses of Reddit, what have been your "why didn't you come in sooner" moments? I had a patient come in saying he couldn't see. How long had it been going on? For 5 days. The man had been blind for 5 days and didn't come in because he thought it might be like a cold or something. During the exam, when I asked him to move his legs, he said, "No, I can't do that." I asked how long he'd been unable to move his legs or walk. Wife chimes in, "About 2 years. Never saw a doctor about it. They just borrowed a friend's wheelchair and kept it rolling. Turned out he'd had multiple strokes with multiple risk factors he never addressed." Given how little insight he appeared to have into the condition, I honestly felt sorry. He didn't have insurance, so I'm sure that played a role in him avoiding seeing anyone. Wasn't it the strokes that made him avoid seeing anyone? Different strokes for different folks. Former medic here. Called to a patient who had cut their leg while chopping wood about a week prior and now it was really itchy. Old gentleman, didn't drive, lived alone. Got to his house, unwrapped the ungodly swollen leg to find that he tried to super glue the wound closed and maggots had commenced to growing inside. The itching he was feeling was the writhing maggots under his skin. On the plus side, the maggots likely kept him from developing sepsis. True. I was just expecting dry skin or something. Not, attack rice. Well, rice is now dead to me. Not a nurse/doctor but a lab scientist. Had a guy come in at the end of the day for chest pain that's been bothering him all weekend. The ED doc ordered a troponin blood test which helps rule in/out heart attacks. If the test runs above 0.03, we consider that a sign for a heart attack and act accordingly. This guy's very first troponin was 21.00. 21. The highest we've ever had up till then was an 8.00. The guy should have been dead ages ago. But he somehow pulled through. Don't ignore chest pains, people. Edit. Just wanna clarify that the hospital I work for is a tiny-ass, 25-bed, rural community critical care hospital. Definitely not a place with dedicated cardiologists, cath lab, bedside assays, or even a big test menu, period. Bare basics. And the guy did, somehow, end up surviving. So, what is troponin? For those of us who aren't lab scientists. Troponin is a type of protein the heart releases into the bloodstream when it's injured. The more troponin swimming about, the worse your heart is doing, and it's one of the key tests for heart attack patients. If your troponin is high, your heart is seriously fucked up. Years ago, as a nursing assistant on an oncology floor, we had a guy admitted because he had had an erection for several days and had lost the ability to pee. His bladder was close to bursting and his poor junk was, think microwaved hot dog. Really bad. But none of that was as interesting as the fact that this guy had untreated skin cancer on his nose for several years that had over time become infected, developed MRSA, and spread across his face. He had no nose, no cheek, and no eye on one side of his face, and was starting to lose his other eye. You could see part of his fucking skull. I don't know why he chose to leave it untreated, and I have no idea how long it took to get that bad. But I will never ever forget the smell and texture of his rotting face. On the upside, we were eventually able to convince him to have reconstructive surgery. He ended up getting a skin graft that covered up his eye, nose and cheek. So, if you ever meet a very grumpy dude with nothing but a mouth and one eye, know that this is way better than the alternative. Holy shit. That level of denial sounds like mental illness. Good writing, by the way. Love a plot twist. I was working as a surgical junior when my team was called down to A% 26C to see a patient who had come in with a complication from a recent hernia operation. When we came down, We saw that the patient was holding a plastic bag over their abdomen. When this was removed, we found that their wound had opened and their intestine was visible to the air. It transpired that this was not something that had happened overnight. It had taken several days. The patient had started using plastic bags and newspaper to dress the wound when they ran out of dressings. Edit. Addendum. Because this is getting a lot of views, I must stress that this case was exceptionally uncommon, and an example of what happens when someone does not seek medical attention when it is obviously required. In general, hernia operations are very common and very safe. That being said, if you have any surgical procedure and you are not certain the wound is healing properly, you must seek medical attention. That's crazy. I wonder what made them eventually come in. Probably realized it's not typical when the front fell off. The front's not supposed to fall off for a start. Guy came in with a dead leg. Waited until it turned black and then decided to head to the ER. They tried an angiogram to open up blood flow, but it was way late for that. Guy had several clots in his lungs and legs. Undiagnosed atrial fibrillation. He couldn't believe we were going to amputate. Kept asking me what else I could do. Go back in time a week ago and come in, kinda around when it turned blue. It's amazing a person can have a dying leg. Blood clots, which I get he might have never noticed that one. Plus a heart condition and still not feel the need to go to an ER at the very least. My dad is the one that wouldn't go in. He got a sore in the crease on the bottom of his second toe, the one next to the big toe. So it would be the piggy that stayed home. And just kept ignoring it. He would go with his wife to her nail place and have his toenails trimmed, and I think that's where the infection probably got in when they soaked his feet. He blew it off for a couple of weeks until the wife made him see the doc. It's a good thing she did. The infection had gotten into the bone, so they had to snip his toe off to the first knuckle to catch it before it went any further. The doc said had he waited any longer, he could have lost the entire foot. He's lucky to just have a stubby piggy and not a stubby leg. This little piggy died at home. Not a doctor, but an army medic. Had a dude come into the aid station at like 2 AM with his arm all wrapped up. Took the wraps off. Shit looked necrotic. I asked him what the fuck was going on. Turns out, the weekend before we went out to the field, this man went and got his whole forearm tattooed. He then spent the next week wading through chest-deep swamps, figuring that if he just kept his arm wrapped, he'd be okay. I was like, brother, no. Edit. Oh yeah, there was also that time some female LT came in with vaginal pain. Took a look, saw one hell of an infection. Apparently, she hadn't changed her tampon in nearly a week. We, meaning I, while the doctor watched, had to retrieve it. She probably thought she'd taken it out. That's happened to me and a friend. I realized after a couple of days, but my friend thought she was dying and went to the ER. Only for them to realize what it was. Had a patient brought in by her son who took care of her. When she arrived to our unit, I performed a skin assessment, took off her socks and found a fallen off gangrenous toe. Seems fake and I wish this was, but it was by far the nastiest thing I've witnessed. Son said he had no idea when his mother's foot became that bad. No words. Our X-ray professor told us this happened to her once too when she removed a person's sock to X-ray their foot. Hasn't happened to me yet though. When I read gangrene or diabetic foot or osteomyelitis in the medical history for any foot rays, and the patient has socks on, I don't take the sock off. Image is just fine with the sock on. The smell usually tips you off regarding how bad it is. Also if it looks wet. I don't want to remove the socks and find out that chunks of skin is going to come off with the sock. Had a guy show up in my clinic one day with a complaint of finger swelling. So as the story went, his finger got swollen and painful about a week prior. Just got worse and worse. And about 3 days prior to coming, a hole opened up in the tip of his finger. This is where I, personally, would have noped right to the office. So come the day of the visit, he says, by the way, I pulled something out of the hole in my finger yesterday with a pair of tweezers. No idea what it is. I asked him if he took a picture or kept it. And he produced a tissue from his shirt pocket. It was his distal phalanx. Read. Last bone in the finger. The bone had gotten infected and the body did its thing and basically tried to eject what was now a hot foreign body. The guy pulled his fingertip out of his fingertip. A better magic trick I have not since seen. I'm sorry, WHAT?